The deep hum of Zirion Prime's central station filled the air as Commander Elias Cade stepped off the transport shuttle. His boots touched the polished metal floor, but his mind was elsewhere. The station floated like a giant ring around the blue star, a symbol of peace in a galaxy full of conflict. Today, though, peace felt very far away. Elias looked around. Hundreds of officials from dozens of species filled the grand halls. Tall insectoids from Vrexia moved past heavy-shelled Korans. Feathered diplomats from Shrylis spoke quietly with robotic envoys from the Cyrix hives. But not a single human stood among them. The human delegation seats at the Galactic Union Council had been empty for over a week now. Officially, they were delayed. Unofficially, everyone knew something was wrong. Elias, the last human liaison officer left on Zirion Prime, walked toward the council hall. His face was tense. His jaw clenched. He had sent dozens of messages to Earth Command. None had been answered. He tried the colonies. Silence. He tried private channels. Silence again. It wasn't just the council seats that were empty. Every human ship, colony, and station had gone silent. As Elias entered the tall silver doors of the council hall, he felt every eye turn toward him. Whispers followed. He kept walking, ignoring the glances. He took his place in the observer section and waited. The council session began. High Chancellor Drazek of the Ralvek Dominion took the center stage. His tall, armored frame towered over the others. His scales shimmered dark red under the hall lights. His sharp teeth showed as he spoke. "The humans have left us," Drazek's voice boomed through the chamber. "Without warning, without reason. Their seats are empty. Their borders are silent. Their worlds are dead." A low murmur filled the hall. Elias stood up. "That's not true," he shouted. All eyes turned to him again. Drazek sneered. "Do you deny it, Commander Cade? Where are your people? Where is your leadership? Your fleets? Your colonies?" Elias felt heat rise in his chest. He took a breath and spoke clearly. "I don't know what happened, but I will find out. Humanity wouldn't leave like this. There must be a reason." Drazek stepped closer to the center. His voice grew sharper. "The reason is betrayal. They have abandoned the Union. They have abandoned us. We cannot trust them any longer." More voices joined in, some in agreement, others in protest. The chamber grew louder with every passing moment. Elias raised his voice again. "I asked the council for time. Let me investigate. Let me find the truth before we make any decisions." The council president, a silver-skinned Saren named Telai, struck her staff on the floor. The noise stopped. "You have until the next council session," she said firmly. "If you bring no answers, we will proceed without humanity." Elias nodded slowly. He turned and left the hall. His steps were heavy, but his mind was clear. He had to act fast. As he walked through the corridors of Zirion Prime, Elias knew one thing for sure. If he failed to uncover the truth, the galaxy would tear itself apart. Elias Cade left the council hall with the weight of a broken galaxy on his shoulders. The shining corridors of Zirion Prime felt colder now. He passed guards, diplomats, and workers, but none spoke to him. He was alone in every way that mattered. He needed information. Real answers. Rumors and fear would not be enough to stop Drazek. Elias knew only one place where human records were kept in full: the Union Central Archives. It was a massive data vault deep beneath the surface of the station. Only authorized personnel were allowed inside. Elias still had clearance, but he wondered how long that would last. He made his way to the lower levels. The lights here were dimmer. The air felt heavier. He passed security gates and biometric scans. The final door slid open with a low hiss. Inside, rows of glowing data towers stretched as far as the eye could see. At the heart of the archives stood Relna, an old friend. She was a Vasari, tall, thin, with dark silver skin and bright white eyes. She had worked in the archives for over 30 years. Elias trusted her. She was one of the few who had never taken sides in the political games above. Relna looked up from her console. She smiled softly when she saw Elias. "I wonder how long it would take you to come here," she said. Elias nodded. "I need your help, Relna. I need to know if humanity left any record of what's going on. Anything at all." Relna glanced around, then motioned him closer. She lowered her voice. I started looking days ago. Quietly. I found something strange. She pulled up a data file on her console. The title read, Silent Departure Protocol. Elias felt a chill run through him. What is it? He asked. Relna shook her head. That's the strange part. The file is incomplete. Most of it is locked behind layers of old human security codes. But for what I could read, it seems like it was a planned exit. Elias frowned. Planned? You mean humanity chose to leave? Relna nodded slowly. It looks that way. But the reasons are missing. All I found is this. She pressed a key, and a single line of text appeared on the screen. For the safety of all life, we leave by choice. Do not follow. Elias stared at the words. His heart pounded in his chest. That doesn't make sense, he whispered. Why wouldn't they tell the Union? Why leave me behind? Relna looked troubled. I don't know, but there's more. She showed him a second file. It held deep space energy readings recorded by human science stations just before they went silent. The readings showed strange patterns, sharp, controlled bursts of energy coming from the edge of known space. No known species uses this kind of energy signature, Relna said. The pattern looks artificial. Elias leaned closer. His mind raced. Could this be why they left? He asked. Did they find something dangerous? Relna looked away. It's possible, but the records stopped there. Whatever happened next, it was wiped or never recorded at all. Elias stood up and ran a hand through his short black hair. Every answer only brought more questions. But one thing was clear, humanity hadn't vanished by accident. They had left on purpose. Before he could think further, the archive lights dimmed suddenly. A soft alarm sounded. Relna's eyes widened. Security alert, she whispered. The door opened. 2 Ralvex soldiers stepped inside. Their sharp claws tapped on their rifles as they scanned the room. Elias and Relna exchanged a quick look. Relna shut down the console and nodded toward the side exit. Elias moved fast. He slipped through the narrow door, keeping to the shadows. Relna stayed behind, pretending to work as the soldiers approached. Elias didn't look back. He knew Relna was risking everything by helping him. He made his way through the back corridors until he reached a dark maintenance tunnel. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Drazek's agents were already moving against him. Time was running out. Elias looked at the data stick in his hand. It held copies of everything Relna had found. It wasn't much, but it was something, a trail to follow. He knew what he had to do next. He needed to find the origin of those strange energy signals. Whatever humanity had discovered out there, it was the key to everything. Elias pushed off the wall and started walking deeper into the station. He would not stop until he found the truth. Elias knew he was running out of time. The next council session was only days away, and Drazek was already making his move. Elias left the archives through the lower access tunnels. He kept to the shadows. He knew Drazek had eyes everywhere now. He had seen their faces in the crowd. Unmarked agents, quiet observers, and soldiers dressed as staff. The Ralvek Dominion was preparing for something big. Elias needed help, but his allies were few. He thought about Relna, still trapped in the archives, covering for him. He hated leaving her behind, but he had no choice. Getting caught would help no one. He made his way to an old contact, Captain Varric, a retired Strilus officer who once served on a joint human patrol fleet. Varric ran a small repair bay near the outer docks. If anyone could help Elias get off Zirion Prime without being noticed, it was Varric. When Elias arrived, Varric was busy fixing an old cargo drone. His sharp eyes lifted as Elias entered. "You look like trouble," Varric said, his voice dry and sharp. "I am trouble," Elias replied. Varric waved him closer. "Then speak fast." Elias showed Varric the data stick. He explained what Relna had found, silent departure protocol, and the strange deep space signals. He told him about the soldiers in the archives, about Drazek's growing power. Varric listened in silence. Finally, he leaned back and rubbed his chin with one feathered hand. "I heard Drazek's fleet is already moving toward the outer sectors," Varric said. "He's not waiting for the Council's permission. He wants to take human space by force." Elias clenched his fists. "Then I have to move faster. I need a ship. I have to trace those signals." Varric nodded. I might know a way, but you won't like it. Elias raised an eyebrow. Tell me. Varric leaned in closer. The only ship fast enough to outrun the Ralvec patrols is a smuggler's runner, the Shadeclaw. It's docked in Bay 17. The pilot's name is Kale. He doesn't trust anyone, and he won't work cheap. Elias didn't care about the cost. He only cared about the mission. He thanked Varric and headed toward Bay 17. The docking bay was dark and smelled of burned fuel. The Shadeclaw sat at the far end, its black hull covered in battle scars. Near the boarding ramp stood a tall figure in a long coat, arms crossed. Elias approached carefully. You Kale? He asked. The figure turned. Kale was human, or at least he looked like one. His face was marked by a thin scar across his jaw. His eyes were cold, unreadable. Depends who's asking, Kale replied. I need a fast ship, Elias said. I have credits. I need to go beyond the border. Kale studied him for a moment. And why would I risk my ship for you? Elias didn't waste time. He showed the data stick again. Because humanity didn't run. They left for a reason. I'm going to find out why. And if you don't help, Drazek's going to burn what's left of the Union to the ground. Kale's eyes narrowed. He seemed to weigh the risk. Finally, he sighed. 50,000 credits. No haggling. Elias nodded. He transferred the funds without blinking. Kale lowered the ramp. We leave at first shift. Be on time. Elias left the bay and made his way back toward the upper levels. He had one last thing to do, warn the council. He didn't have proof of Drazek's full plan yet, but he had to speak. He had to slow him down. When he entered the council hall the next day, it was already packed. Drazek stood in the center again, his voice loud and sharp. The humans have abandoned us, Drazek declared. They left us to face the unknown. I call for the Union to dissolve all human agreements. I call for the Union to place all remaining human assets under Ralvec control. For the safety of us all. Many council members nodded. Fear filled the chamber. Elias stepped forward. His voice cut through the noise. That's a lot. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to him once again. Elias stood tall. I have evidence that humanity's departure was not betrayal. They left for a reason. A threat none of us yet understand. I have data pointing to signals from beyond known space. Signals no species in this Union can explain. Drazek's eyes burned with fury. He took a step forward. You bring half-truths and shadows. Where is your proof, Commander? You stand alone. Elias felt the weight of every gaze. But he didn't back down. I'm leaving to find that proof, Elias said. I will return with answers. Drazek sneered. If you leave now, you may not be welcome back. Elias looked around the council hall one last time. He saw doubt on some faces, fear on others. But he also saw a few silent nods. A few still believed. He turned on his heel and walked out without another word. As he made his way to the outer docks, he knew Drazek would not wait much longer. War was coming, but Elias was already on his way to stop it. The Shadeclaw lifted off smoothly from Zirion Prime. Its engines hummed low, like a predator waiting to strike. Inside the cockpit, Elias strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat. Kale sat beside him, his eyes focused on the stars ahead. Neither man spoke as the ship cleared the station's outer defenses. Once they reached open space, Kale broke the silence. Where are we going? Kale asked. Elias pulled out the data stick and brought up the star charts. Here, he said, pointing to a dark zone beyond human territory. This is where the last energy signals were recorded. Kale let out a slow breath. No known stations out there. No colonies. You sure about this? I'm sure, Elias answered. It's the only lead I have. Kale nodded and punched in the coordinates. The ship jumped to light speed, stars stretching into long white lines across the black. The journey took several hours. Elias spent most of the time in the back of the ship, studying the data again and again. The energy patterns showed a clear rhythm, sharp bursts spaced evenly apart, almost like a message. But there was no translation, no known language, just the pattern itself. As they neared the target zone, Kale slowed the ship. The stars returned to normal as they dropped out of light speed. The view ahead was empty. No planets, no stations, just open space and a thick field of cosmic dust drifting like a gray mist. Kale leaned forward. Sensors are picking up something. Low-energy artificial source. Elias stood. Take us in. The Shade Claw moved carefully into the dust field. Visibility dropped to near zero. The ship's scanners struggled to cut through the interference. Then, out of the mist, something appeared. A station. Not human. Not Union-made. The structure floated dead in space, its surface covered in strange markings. It looked ancient, yet untouched by time. The design was smooth, almost organic, with no visible windows or docking ports. Kale whistled softly. What is that? Elias shook his head. I have no idea. The energy readings spiked. The same pattern as before, short bursts, evenly spaced. Elias leaned over the console. Can you match the pattern? Sent a reply. Kale hesitated. Might be risky. Could trigger a defense system. Elias looked out the window at the silent station. Do it. Kale sighed but obeyed. He tapped the controls and sent out a reply, matching the rhythm exactly. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then, the station lit up. Soft white lights flowed across its surface. A section of the outer shell opened slowly, revealing a tunnel just wide enough for the Shade Claw to enter. Kale looked at Elias. Are you sure about this? No, Elias answered, but we've come this far. Kale guided the ship into the tunnel. The walls glowed with soft light, guiding them deeper inside. Finally, they reached a large circular chamber. The ship hovered in the center. Gravity fields caught them, holding the ship steady. Elias stood, heart pounding. He grabbed his sidearm and headed for the ramp. Kale followed, keeping his hand near his holster. The ramp lowered with a hiss. Warm air flowed into the ship. It didn't feel like any station Elias had ever visited. The air was clean, almost too perfect. They stepped onto the smooth floor. No guards, no welcoming party, just silence. Elias moved toward the center of the chamber. A small platform rose from the floor, glowing softly. A voice echoed through the chamber. It spoke in perfect human language. Elias Cade, you have come as expected. Kale tensed, his hand tightening on his weapon. Elias stepped forward. Who are you? The voice answered, calm and clear. We are the Watchers. Humanity discovered us long ago. We warned them of what is coming. They chose to leave to prepare for the coming storm. They left to give the galaxy time. Elias felt a cold wave wash over him. What storm? What threat? The voice spoke again. A force beyond your stars. A hunger that cannot be stopped by fleets or weapons. Humanity saw what others could not. They chose silence over war. Their departure was a shield, a warning. Elias swallowed hard. Why didn't they tell the Union? The voice paused for a moment, then answered, because fear spreads faster than truth. If they had spoken, the Union would have broken long before now. Panic would have consumed the stars. Humanity left to delay the collapse. Elias felt anger rise in his chest. So they left us in the dark? They left you with hope, the voice replied. And they left you behind because you were meant to find us. You must now decide what to do with this knowledge. The platform lowered back into the floor. The lights in the chamber began to dim. Kale grabbed Elias by the arm. We have to go. Now. Elias nodded. He turned back toward the ship, his mind spinning. He had answers, but they raised even bigger questions. What was the coming threat? Where had humanity gone to prepare? And how could he convince the Union to believe him? As they lifted off from the station and sped back toward the stars, Elias knew one thing. Drazek was already preparing for war, and Elias had to stop him before it was too late. The journey back to Zerion Prime felt longer than the trip out. Elias stood in the Shade Claw's observation deck, staring out at the stars. His mind was full of questions. The voice in the station had answered some, but left much hidden. He knew one thing for certain now. Humanity's disappearance was not betrayal. They had left to protect the Union, not to abandon it. But how could he prove it? How could he make the Council believe him before Drazek took full control? Kale entered the deck behind him. His steps were slow, thoughtful. You've been quiet, Kale said. Elias didn't turn around. I have proof now, but no one will listen. Kale leaned on the wall. Then make them listen. You come this far. Elias nodded slowly. He couldn't turn back. Not now. He had to face Drazek again. When the Shade Claw neared Zerion Prime, Kale activated the ship's stealth systems. Elias watched as the scanners showed Ralvek's ships surrounding the station. Drazek had moved his fleet in early. The Union hadn't voted yet, but Drazek was already acting like he owned it. Kale narrowed his eyes. Looks like the Union is already under his boot. Elias clenched his fists. Not yet. Kale guided the Shadeclaw to a hidden docking ring on the dark side of the station. It was an old maintenance port, long forgotten by most. Elias had used it once before, years ago, when a Union was under threat from smugglers. Back then, he was hunting criminals. Now he was the one sneaking in. The ship docked quietly. Elias grabbed the data stick containing the station recordings and the energy signals. He checked his sidearm again. He wasn't sure it would help, but it gave him some comfort. Kale stopped him at the ramp. If you don't come back, I'm leaving in 6 hours. I don't plan to get caught in a Ralvek blockade. Elias gave a small nod. Fair enough. He slipped into the service tunnels, moving quickly and quietly. The station felt different now. There were more soldiers, fewer civilians. Most of the security wore Ralvek colors. Elias knew Drazek wasn't waiting for a vote. He was taking control by force. Elias reached the inner levels and sent a secure message to Relna. He knew she would be watched. He used an old signal code only they shared. 5 minutes later, he saw her waiting near a cargo lift. She looked tired but unharmed. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. I found it, Elias replied. I know why humanity left. Relna's eyes widened. What did you find? Elias handed her a small copy of the data. Take this to the neutral council members. Show them before the session starts. I'm going to stop Drazek. Relna grabbed his arm. Elias, he has control of the station. He won't let you speak. Elias nodded. I'm counting on that. Before she could stop him, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. The council session began an hour later. The grand hall was filled again. But this time, Ralvek's soldiers stood at the walls, fully armed. The council members looked uneasy. Some whispered among themselves. Some sat in silence. Drazek stood at the center, dressed in black armor, his sharp teeth bared in a grin. Today, we take the final step, Drazek announced. Today, the Union becomes strong again, free of human weakness. I call for the final vote. Elias pushed through the crowd. He climbed over the outer rail and dropped into the center of the chamber. Gasps filled the room. Drazek turned, his grin fading. You were warned, Kate, Drazek hissed. Elias stood tall. His voice rang out across the hall. Humanity didn't betray the Union. They left to protect it. Drazek signaled his soldiers. They aimed their weapons at Elias, but the council president, Telai, stood and raised her staff. Let him speak, she commanded. The soldiers froze, unsure of what to do. Elias continued. Humanity discovered something beyond our borders, a force that threatens all life. They left to buy us time, not to abandon us. I have the records. I have the proof. Drazek stepped forward, his voice cold. Lies. Nothing but more human tricks. Relna stood in the upper gallery. She raised the data display, projecting the recordings for all to see. The strange energy signals, the voice from the station, the warning of a coming storm. The chamber fell silent. Some council members looked at Drazek with doubt. Others whispered nervously. Telai spoke again. If this is true, we must stop and prepare. We cannot dissolve the Union today. Drazek's face twisted in rage. You are all fools. The Union is already mine. He raised his clawed hand. His soldiers aimed again. Elias drew his sidearm, standing firm. You'll have to kill me in front of everyone. Drazek hesitated. His eyes shifted as the council watched. Telai stepped down from her platform. Enough. The council will hear this warning. There will be no vote today. Drazek lowered his hand slowly. His soldiers stood down, but his eyes burned with fury. Without another word, Drazek turned and stormed out of the chamber, his soldiers following close behind. Elias stood in the center, breathing hard. He had stopped the vote, but he knew Drazek wasn't finished. The Ralvek fleet still surrounded the station. The galaxy was still on the edge of collapse. Elias looked up at the council. He knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time, the truth had been heard. The council chamber emptied slowly after Drazek stormed out. Many members looked shaken. Some gathered in small groups, whispering about what they had just seen. Others left quickly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Elias stood alone in the center of the hall, still catching his breath. He had stopped the vote, but he knew it was not over. Drazek would not accept defeat so easily. Telai, the council president, stepped down from her platform. Her long silver robe swayed as she approached Elias. "You took a great risk today," she said quietly. "I had no choice," Elias replied. "If Drazek wins, the Union falls." Telai nodded. "And what happens if you are wrong? What if this threat you speak of is not real?" Elias looked her in the eye. "I saw it. I heard the message. Humanity wouldn't abandon the galaxy unless the danger was real. You know that." Telai sighed and motioned for him to follow. Together, they walked through a private corridor that led to the council's secure meeting room. Relna was already waiting inside with a few trusted council members from neutral worlds. The door sealed behind them. "We have little time," Telai said, looking around the small group. "We need to decide what happens next." Relna stepped forward. "The evidence is real. I have verified the records myself. Humanity's exit was planned. The signals are real. We cannot ignore this." A Vrexian counselor hissed softly. "And yet, if we stop Drazek now, he will strike. His fleet is already here. His soldiers control the outer sectors of the station." Elias spoke firmly. "Then we stand now, together, or we lose everything." The room fell silent for a moment. Telai turned to Elias. "What do you propose?" Elias looked around at each face. "We call an emergency assembly. Not just the council. All species. All representatives. We show them the full truth. We make them see Drazek's lies for what they are." Relna nodded. "We must act before Drazek blocks the station completely." Telai agreed. She tapped her communicator. "Send a call. Every representative is to gather within the hour." The Great Assembly Hall was even larger than the council chamber. It had not been used in years. Now, it filled quickly as species from across the station arrived. Workers, diplomats, guards, all came to hear what had shaken the council. Elias stood on the central platform with Telai and Relna by his side. He watched the crowd grow. He saw fear on their faces. Fear of the unknown. Fear of war. Fear of Drazek. Kale stood in the shadows near the entrance, watching with his hand on his weapon, ready for trouble. When the hall was full, Telai stepped forward. "People of the Union," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You have all heard the rumors. Today, you will hear the truth." She motioned to Relna, who activated the data projection. The crowd watched as the energy signals filled the air above them. They saw the strange station in deep space. They heard the voice of the Watchers warning of the coming storm. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Then Elias spoke. "Humanity left not to abandon us, but to protect us. They saw a threat beyond our stars, a threat that none of us were ready to face. They left to buy us time, to keep us united until we were ready." He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many people as he could. "Drazek wants you to believe we betrayed you. But the real betrayal is here. He uses fear to take control. He wants to rule the Union by force. But we still have a choice." At that moment, the doors at the far end of the hall burst open. Drazek entered with a full squad of armed soldiers. His face was twisted with rage. "This assembly is illegal." Drazek shouted, "I order you all to stand down." Kale moved to block the soldiers, his weapon drawn. A few guard from other species also stepped forward, standing between Drazek and the crowd. Telai raised her staff high. "No, Chancellor. Today, the Union stands free. You will not silence us." Drazek's soldiers hesitated, unsure of their orders. The crowd began to move, pressing forward, standing together. Hundreds of voices rose in defiance. "Enough!" Drazek roared, but the crowd did not stop. Elias took a step toward him. "It's over, Drazek. You've lost." Drazek's eyes burned with fury, but he could see the truth. The people no longer feared him. The Union had chosen to stand together. With a sharp gesture, Drazek turned and marched out of the hall, his soldiers following close behind. He had lost control. The crowd slowly began to settle. People looked at each other, unsure of what would come next. Elias turned to Telai. We've stopped him for now, but his fleet is still out there. Telai nodded. We will negotiate. We will prepare. The Union has survived worse. Relna smiled softly. And we have the truth now. We won't be divided again so easily. Elias let out a long breath. The fight was not over, but for the first time, the Union had hope. Kale approached, lowering his weapon. What now, Commander? Elias looked toward the stars beyond the hall's glass walls. Now, we start preparing for what's really coming. 2 days had passed since the Great Assembly. 2 days since Drazek had been forced to back down. But Elias Cade knew the Union was not safe yet. He stood at the edge of a large viewing deck, watching the Ralvek fleet still circling Zirion Prime. Drazek had not left. His ships stayed in position like silent hunters, waiting for the next move. Behind him, the council worked around the clock. Leaders from every species argued over the next steps. Some wanted peace. Some wanted to strike the Ralvek fleet while they had the chance. No one trusted anyone completely. Not yet. The Union was holding, but only just. Relna joined Elias on the deck, holding a datapad. Her expression was serious, but there was a hint of hope in her voice. The smaller worlds have started to call for talks, she said. Some are even sending ships to reinforce Zirion. Elias nodded, but didn't take his eyes off the Ralvek fleet. And Drazek, he asked. Silent, Relna replied. He hasn't sent a single message since the assembly. Elias sighed. He knew Drazek wasn't finished. The Ralvek leader would wait, gather strength, and strike when the Union was weakest. But Elias also knew the Union had a chance now. A small one, but it was real. Has there been any word from human space? He asked quietly. Relna lowered her head. None. It's still silent. Elias had hoped, deep down, that humanity would return now that the truth was out. But the emptiness remained. No sheeps, no messages, only quiet stars where humanity had once stood strong. Later that day, Elias walked into the council chamber one last time. He stood before the gathered leaders, knowing this might be the last time they trusted him enough to listen. We've held the Union together, Elias began. But we all know Drazek won't give up. He's waiting, watching. We can't afford to wait for him to move first. The council members shifted in their seats. Elias continued. We must send ships to defend every world, not just Zirion. We must rebuild our defenses together. And we must prepare for the threat humanity warned us about. A Koran leader stood. What threat? We have no proof it's real. Elias looked at the council and spoke with steady conviction. Humanity believed it was real enough to leave everything behind. I believe them. You should too. Telai stood beside him. The Union must stand ready. Together, or not at all. The council voted. The result was not perfect, but it was enough. Ships from several species would begin joint patrols. Communications would reopen between the worlds that had turned away. The Union would not dissolve. Not yet. But some members left quietly after the meeting. Some worlds refused to send ships or aid. The cracks in the Union remained. Elias knew it. He felt it in every conversation, every whispered fear. The Union had survived this crisis, but it was still fragile, divided. As Elias left the chamber, Kale waited for him near the exit. Well, Kale asked. Elias gave a tired smile. We live to fight another day. Kale crossed his arms. In the bigger fight, Elias looked toward the stars again. It's still out there. Kale nodded. What's next for you? Elias thought for a moment. I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to find out what humanity saw and why they chose to run. Kale smiled slightly. I figured you'd say that. You're stubborn. Elias chuckled softly. Someone has to be. Relna approached them both. There's a transport leaving for the outer colonies tomorrow. It's not much, but it's a start. Elias nodded. That's where I'll go next. The next day, Elias stood at the docking bay, watching ships come and go. The Union wasn't healed, but had not fallen either. That was something. Kale stood beside him. If you ever need a fast ship again, Elias shook his hand. I'll find you. Relna gave him a final nod. Be careful, Elias. The galaxy isn't done testing us yet. Elias smiled. I know. He boarded the transport, carrying the data stick and the memories of everything he had seen. As the ship lifted off, leaving Zirion Prime behind, Elias looked out at the stars one more time. Humanity was still missing. The threat still waited in the dark. The Union stood on shaky ground. But the fight was not over, and Elias Cade was not finished.